And I've seen the incredible dichotomy between restaurant culture in Europe and restaurant culture in the US, and it could not be more different, guys. Hey guys, what's up? It's Kelly again, and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while since I've done a sit-down style video, but I recently watched a video that Haley Alexis put up on her channel where she talks about different jobs that she held in the US, and I thought it could be interesting for me to talk about my experiences working different jobs I've held in the US. All of the jobs I'm going to talk about are jobs that I held while I was in high school, and one of them is a co-op, and I'll explain that later. I'm sure that there are a lot of differences as well as similarities between Germany and the US when working these specific types of jobs. And first, I would say that when I told my German boyfriend that I held jobs while I was in high school, he was really surprised to hear that. I don't know if that's just him or if it's really that uncommon in Germany for high school teenagers to be working various jobs. But in the US, I would say that it is extremely common to encounter high school teenagers in the workforce, working on weekends or after school hours, of course. Alright, so the first job that I ever held was at a hotel where I worked as a housekeeper or a maid. I think I was about 15 when I first started working there, and I would go in on weekends to clean hotel rooms. I was required to wear a uniform which basically looked like medical scrubs, where I had loose black bottoms and a very loose maroon colored top. It was very simple looking. You were allowed to wear your hair however you wanted, but I personally always put it in a ponytail in order to keep the hair out of my face while I was doing pretty rigorous work of cleaning hotel rooms and scrubbing a lot of bathroom floors. There wasn't a lot of emphasis on our appearance. We were pretty much just expected to show up with a clean uniform and looking generally tidy and professional. I would get to work at about 7:30 in the morning, and since it was a job where I got paid by the hour, the first thing I would do when I got to work was take my little time card out and insert it into the time clock, which would automatically stamp the exact time onto the time card, and that is how they kept track of how many hours I was working, and they would basically round it to the nearest 15-minute mark, and they would pay you if you worked like 7 hours and 45 minutes, they would pay you 7 hours and 45 minutes. They didn't round up to 8, and they didn't round down to 7 or even 7.5. At this job, I got paid Pennsylvania's minimum wage, which in 2002, about the time I was working there, was $5.15. And if you're curious, Pennsylvania's current minimum wage in 2020 is now $7.25. So in the past 18 years, it's gone up just a little over $2. So I would make around $330 a month working, again, just weekends. I was allowed to take, I think, about a 30-minute lunch break, which I had to clock in and out for. And during my lunch break, I would walk across the street. There was a grocery store there. I would grab myself a pastry or a sandwich. Knowing 15-year-old Kelly, it was probably just something generally unhealthy, and then I would eat and get right back to work. Now, I know some of the housekeepers I worked with were smokers, and so I know they were taking smoke breaks during the workday, but I have no idea how those breaks were regulated. I personally didn't take any breaks, which is pretty much on par for my entire personality. So all the housekeepers would arrive around 7:30, and we would gather in our teeny tiny closet of a break room, and we would wait for the head housekeeper to come in and give us our room assignments. Now, I was the youngest by far, absolutely by far. I think the next youngest housekeeper was 26 or maybe 28, and then the rest were well into their 40s, although This is in the mind of 15-year-old Kelly, where basically anyone above the age of college aged looked extremely old to me. So they may have been in their 20s and 30s, and to me they just looked very old, which makes me quite sad because now I'm in my 30s and I know that high school kids are looking at me saying, wow, she's well into her 40s. Anyway, so the head housekeeper would come in and she would hand us each a sheet of paper with a computer-generated list of room assignments on it, and the computer would add various details about each room, such as what type of room it was. It would include how many guests were staying in each room. So if it was a double with only one guest, you would know that hopefully there was only one bed used. And then it would also tell you if it was a checkout, meaning the guests were checking out that day and leaving the hotel, or if it was a stayover, meaning that the guests were going to stay for at least one more night in that room at the hotel. So after we got our room assignments, we would head up to the second floor of the hotel into the housekeeper's closet, and that's where all of our carts were and our vacuums, and we would start stocking and loading up our housekeeping carts. So you would look at your sheet, count up how many of each type of bed there was in your rooms, and you would gather the appropriate amount of flat sheets and fitted sheets, how many towels you needed, because of course double rooms had more towels than a king room, and so on. You would also load up your cart with all of the little shampoos and soaps and matchbooks, all of the small items that you see in a hotel room is what we kept on the cart, including some extra Bibles, because, and I saw this in Germany too, and at least in Munich, there were some hotels that keep Bibles in each of the nightstands, which I think is extremely interesting. And so we had some backup Bibles in case a guest accidentally stole one, or we'll just say accidentally took a Bible. And so we would also grab our vacuum cleaner, and it was always kind of a race to get the good vacuums. Yes, there were good vacuums and bad vacuums, and we had them memorized, and so it was kind of like the slowpoke got stuck with the crappy vacuum. So once we had our carts completely loaded up, we would head to our rooms to start cleaning, and you would just clean, and as soon as you were done cleaning all of your rooms, you were done for the day. Some housekeepers would move at a very slow pace to try and draw out their work so that they would get paid more hours, which is, in my mind, completely understandable. And then others would just move at a normal pace. Because I was in high school and really any money I was making was just extra pocket cash for me, I'm very fortunate and privileged that my parents paid for pretty much everything I needed whenever I was in school, except if I wanted nice clothes and not thrift store clothes, love you mom, I was going to have to pay for it out of pocket. So that's what my goal was in working jobs like this, was to be able to buy what I wanted and not what my parents decided they could afford. And so I would just work at my normal pace. I wouldn't slow down at all. And whenever we would walk into a room to start cleaning, we were supposed to go to the telephone, pick it up, dial in we each had a unique number code, and then whenever you were done, you would go and dial that same code again, and supposedly this spoke to a computer, and that computer would register how long it took you to clean that room. And I'm guessing that was just for them to make sure that we were consistent and we weren't spending an extraordinarily long amount of time in a room or an extraordinarily short amount of time in a room, and that we were actually cleaning the room, because there was a housekeeper who wasn't changing the bed sheets while I was there. So yeah, I have some trust issues when I go into hotels now, given what I know about what it's like to clean them and different things and shortcuts that housekeepers would do. Many of you guys know that the US has a very strong tipping culture, And, you know, hotel maids can be tipped as well. I would say, based on my experience at this particular hotel, it was very, very rare. If I ever did get a tip, it was clearly just the loose pocket change someone had and just put on the dresser, or maybe it was $1 or $2. I just think it's generally rare for people to tip housekeepers unless there is stayover for multiple nights, and then maybe you start seeing tips coming in. But what we were supposed to do was turn any tips we did get into the office, and the manager would gather all the tips and then divide them equally among us. And so it's kind of funny because I think it was like once every 2 weeks or maybe every month, I would get a little envelope with my tips, my divvied up tips in them, and it would honestly be like 8 cents. And I'm just like, why even give this to me? It was just kind of more of an insult than anything. So yeah, the tipping culture in the US doesn't necessarily apply as strongly when it comes to housekeepers. Now, I like this job enough because I had a lot of autonomy in how I spent my day. I mean, obviously it was pretty regulated, but it was exciting for me to get to choose which rooms. I got like how to organize my work. I got to spend a lot of the time alone. I could watch TV while I was cleaning. I don't ever watch TV anymore except for Netflix, but back then at 15, I definitely watched TV, so I thought that was kind of cool that I got to work a job that allowed me to watch TV at the same time. And my coworkers, they were nice enough. I never really had any big issues with them, but I definitely have a lot of stories between my interactions with my various coworkers and also what it was like to clean hotel rooms, various encounters I had with guests, and different things that I found in the rooms that I had to clean. So if that's at all interesting to you and you want to hear what it was like for me, let me know in the comments below and I'll consider making a video about that in the future. But for now, I'm going to move on to the next job that I held, which was at a local restaurant. I worked as what we called a hostess. Now, hostess means different things at a lot of different restaurants. Usually it just means the person that seats the guests or the parties at a restaurant, but at this particular restaurant, it basically meant that you were a server's little helper, little assistant. And I held that job. I think I started when I was 16. The uniform for that job was a maroon, like a collared polo shirt that had the name of the restaurant embroidered in white on the over the left breast, and you had to wear khaki bottoms. You were allowed to wear pants and shorts so long as they were long. I think probably they did the fingertip rule where your shorts had to extend to at least the bottoms of your fingertips when your arms are down by your sides. That's what my high school did as well. You were not allowed to wear skirts unless your skirt had shorts attached to them. This is an article of clothing called a skort. I have no idea if skirts are still a thing being sold in stores. I haven't seen a skort in a very long time, but I also hardly ever go shopping, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. I also have no idea if that was a thing in Germany, so you guys will have to let me know if you ever wore or saw someone wearing a skort. The cooks were required to wear black pants and white shirts, like just white t-shirts, and the managers, I think, were wearing, if they weren't pulling double duty as working as a server and manager, they were just the manager, they were wearing also black pants and a white button-down shirt, a little bit more dressed up than what the cooks were. Also, at this particular restaurant, it just happened to be that all the cooks were men, they were all male, and all of the servers, the hostesses, and even the managers were all women. That was completely coincidental. It wasn't at all by design. Also, going back to the uniform, we weren't allowed to have our nails painted in order to minimize the risk of your nail polish chipping off into someone's food. We also weren't allowed to wear our hair down. your hair had to be up in a bun or a ponytail or a braid, something where it was very much up and secure in order to minimize the risk of your hair falling out into someone's food. I didn't have any issues with this. It was pretty easy for me to just put my hair in a ponytail and easy to not have your nails painted. But it has definitely given me, similar to like how when I walk into a hotel room, I have a somewhat of a complex about the state of the room. I also, when I walk into a restaurant and my server has her hair down or the server has their nails painted, I kind of don't like it because I know how easy it is for I agreed with these rules. Like I know how easy it is for nail polish to chip unless you have gel or dipped nail polish. And I have pretty long hair. You guys probably saw me before. I used to have hair all the way down to my waist. It's so easy for your hair to fall out. So I don't really like seeing waitresses and waiters walking around with longer, loose hair because I'm just convinced that the hair is going everywhere because that's how I live my life. So yeah, I'm a little particular about the hygiene of my servers because of this job. I don't know if I ever even would have thought about it twice had I not had this job, but I did. So it is definitely on the forefront of my brain when I walk into a restaurant. So at this particular job, there was no time clock like there was at the hotel. So instead of clocking in and out with my time card, we pretty much just had a sheet of paper that we would write down what time we arrived to work, and then the manager on shift had to sign off on it to validate that yes, this was the time she arrived to work, and then of course we would sign out as well. I also got paid minimum wage at this job, so again $5.15 an hour. But in addition to that, again, that strong US tipping culture, I would get 10% of the tips that the waitress I worked with made during my shift. So at the end of the shift, the waitress was supposed to count up all of the tips she made and then in good faith give me 10% of those. At this job, I also worked weekends and also holidays. Holidays were a great time for me to work. I loved working like Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas Eve, because we were always so busy, and of course that meant way more tips. And who doesn't like more money? So I don't remember what the break situation was at this job. I know I wasn't given like a 30-minute lunch break or anything like that. I don't even think I was given short 10-minute, 15-minute breaks. I think my breaks were really just kind of taken in stride whenever there were lulls in my work. But even then, we were expected to pretty much always be doing work. So, you know, because there was no break room, if the manager saw you just standing there not doing anything, she might not have realized that that's the first time that you haven't done anything in like 3 hours because you've been running around like crazy. And so you always had to be actively working, whether that meant filling up ketchup bottles, doing some extra cleaning, slicing bread. We would give people bread as part of their meals. Rolling silverware, wiping down menus, whatever it was, we were supposed to always be engaged. And looking back, it was actually pretty exhausting, even for me being a young, energetic 16-year-old. But yeah, so anyway, as a hostess, and I'm telling you all this because I think that this really points to a lot of differences between restaurant culture in the US compared to Germany. So whenever someone would come into the restaurant, they would be greeted by the seater. And sometimes I would work as the seater. They would rotate among the hostesses. They would be greeted by the seater. The seater would take them to their table, rotating among the sections to make sure that basically no one waitress was overburdened by having all the tables and the bigger parties, and that everybody kind of got an equal share of tables because, again, the tips subsidized the servers' paychecks. So they wanted to make sure that everybody kind of got their fair share of tables. But anyway, so the seater would take the party to the table, and then I would, as the hostess, come around and ask the guests what they wanted to drink, and I would scamper off, go get whatever they wanted, and then the waitress would go and get their food order. That was her responsibility, and either I or she would get the food from the kitchen and bring it out to them, and then I was responsible for making sure their drinks were always refilled because, of course, this is the US and we have a lot of drinks that are free refills. I was also responsible for clearing plates and really just getting anything that the guests needed or wanted, whether it's a special type of condiment or maybe extra napkins. And then the waitress was responsible for making sure that their food was good to go, correcting any issues they may have with it, and so on. And guys, this is it's so interesting to me. I mean, it was interesting to me even back then, but now that I've lived in Europe, I've traveled a lot of the world, and I've seen the incredible dichotomy between restaurant culture in Europe and restaurant culture in the US. And it could not be more different, guys. I mean, in Germany, you are left alone. And I know that sometimes Americans have a hard time with that when they go to Germany because they're used to always having the server at the, the tips of their fingers to be able to get them anything they need. And I guess there's some advantage to that, but they leave you alone so you can have conversations with your, friends that you're eating with and not be constantly interrupted. Whereas at this restaurant, and really at a lot of restaurants in the US, particularly chain restaurants, which I hate the most, you are constantly harassed, it feels like, and interrupted by the wait staff asking, if you want a refill, is everything okay? Do you need anything? Just checking on you. Are you ready to pay? How's the bill gonna be split? Stuff like this, it's constant. And I really liked this job for a lot of reasons. One being that, in contrast to my job at the hotel, a lot of my, all the other hostesses were high school students. And so several of them were my friends, and that always makes working a job way more fun when you're with your friends. And it had some cool moments. I enjoyed interacting with a lot of the guests, not always, but for the most part I did. But also, I really didn't like it because I just felt so annoying. Again, before I even traveled abroad, I felt that it was wrong to constantly go over and interrupt people who are trying to enjoy their meal. But that's exactly what they wanted me to do. Anyway, so let's move on to the third job. And this is the last job that I'll talk about for this video. I know it's kind of dragging on. So the last job that I held in high school was actually at my local newspaper. And this is the one that I said was a co-op. So at my school, we had a vocational technical school, which I did not realize when I was in high school how unique that was. I thought every high school had a vocational technical school, or for short, VOTech. Turns out it's really not that common, and I think it's really an awesome thing. It just costs a lot of money, so a lot of schools don't have them. But what it is classes that high school students can take that hone in on very specific technical skills to prepare that student to then go out into the workforce in that career field. So I know that Germany has a very interesting education system, and maybe this kind of rings a bell to some of my German audience, or maybe you're surprised to hear that we had anything like this in the US, however rare it may be. But I think it's really cool. And the co-op, or the cooperative education program, was a part of the vocational technical school. Now, I wasn't taking any classes in the VOTech, so I don't really know how I got involved in the co-op, but I'm very thankful that I did. The co-op, or the cooperative education program, was basically an opportunity for specific students. There weren't that many of us, maybe 20, to be able to go and work for an employer who had a partnership with the school, as long as the work was directly related to the student's career program. So I took journalism in school, and I don't think that was part of Vo-Tech. I really don't think it was, but maybe it was, and I just didn't even realize it because it is a career-specific class. And so anyway, I was in journalism class, and so I was allowed to work at our local newspaper because they had a partnership with the school, and I was able to do work that directly related to a career in journalism. So I was able to go to the local paper during school hours, very restricted, hours, but during school and work, which is, kind of like an internship. And I was responsible for basically taking the, better articles, the approved articles that my journalism class would write, and consolidate them, put them in a special student edition of my local paper that we would publish every month. So literally, and this is back in like 2004, 2005, so the majority of my hometown, which is a very small town, and majority of them probably still get their news from the physical newspaper and not online. Back then, for sure they did. So every newspaper subscriber would literally get, the paper just like a normal daily newspaper, but it was all student work, and I was the one to lay it out and put it all together, delivered to them. And I think that's a really cool way of highlighting high school students' work. And of course, all the stories were about things that mattered to us or different students, things that were going on in the school. So it was kind of like an inside view of the high school that everybody in the hometown was connected to in some way. So anyway, I would go and I would work right alongside the newspaper staff. I had my little computer station, and I would work on pagination, which is basically the process of laying out the newspaper with all the articles and the photos, the headlines, all of the components that comprise a newspaper layout. And for all you pagination nerds out there like me, I use the software program QuarkXpress. And then I would work with the photo editor and be able to color correct the photos that my fellow classmates took and make sure that they were going to print well on the paper. Newspapers are a very special material and color, and so you kind of have to do some special color correcting of various photos to make sure they print well on the paper. And I really enjoyed my time there. I mean, I got paid minimum wage, so this wasn't free work. I actually got paid by the newspaper, and I would keep track of my hours on my own little timesheet, and I would turn that into both the co-op manager at my school and the newspaper's financial department to make sure that I got paid. And I got to sit there and work alongside actual journalists and hear their conversations, because like a lot of newsrooms, it was just one giant open office where everybody's bouncing ideas back and forth or talking about different things or asking questions. And it was just a cool experience to be a part of that. I got to sit in editors' meetings and hear them, pitch ideas to the editor and decide whether or not they wanted to run a certain story or what angle they wanted it to take. All these things I got to experience when I was only, a high school senior, and I think that's really, really special. And I liked it so much that I actually ended up going back to my local paper whenever I was in college and I was home for my summer break, and I worked full-time there doing pagination. So that at that point I was laying out the actual newspaper, and I was pulling articles down from the different news wires that we were subscribed to, like the Associated Press, the AP Newswire, and so on. And it's actually kind of funny looking back, because again, the majority of my hometown gets their news from the physical newspaper, and there's 19-year-old me literally choosing which articles the town was going to read that day from the myriad of articles available on the different news wires. So I was like hand-picking what newspaper articles the town was reading. I found that kind of funny to reflect on. I also got to go out into the field and cover some different local stories, take some photos, things like this, and that was always really fun for me. It was challenging for me because of course you only have so much time to turn a story around. So that kind of improved my writing. Alright guys, I've rambled on long enough. I need to stop talking. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you found it interesting. I'm super curious to read what you guys have to say in the comments, whether it's about the number of things that I've talked about in this video, but particularly I want to hear if you held a job in high school and what that job was. And if you're not US American, please write what country you're from and whether or not it's normal for high school teenagers to hold jobs in your country, because I'm very curious to hear if we are yet again the outliers in this cultural aspect. If you're not subscribed to my channel yet, guys, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I see you. I know some of you guys are watching my content consistently, but yet not taking the plunge by just hitting that subscribe button, which greatly supports me as the creator of the content that you're consuming. So please help a girl out. Subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. That also really, really helps me, guys, and it helps make sure that other people are able to see my videos. If you're not following me on Instagram, find me at Kelly Does Her Thing. I'm always posting different stories on there for you guys to keep up with me and my personal life. Thank you so much to all of my patrons. You guys are my rock stars. I fully appreciate the support that you guys have been giving me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!